Welcome to the program. And okay, here's one of those guys who has really way too long of a list of all of his accomplishments for me to like go down them. I mean, that would bore you after a while, wouldn't it, Matthew? That just hearing this and this and this and this and this, right?
I've been in a lot of podcasts lately, and when I hear my whole list of credentials, I do start to feel like, all right, it's just cut to the chase. So sure, we can keep it short.
Matthew Brownstein, who is the CEO of Anahat Education Group. Did I say that right?
Correct.
And,
Yes,
and also
Anahat.
so many other things. Anahat. And again, I will mess that up, but I've been enjoying hearing about your journey and the books you've written, and he's written a ton of them. Profound Spirit, the path, all the different stuff I was trying to write. I wrote them all down, but gosh, here I can sit back and just go through the list: interpersonal hypnotherapy, honoring the sacred and transformational relationships, the sutras on healing and enlightenment, the Anahat meditation system, peace under all circumstances. That's some pretty heady book titles.
I guess you could say heady. I'm definitely on the spiritual side of things. So I might say they're very spiritually minded in the sense that I'm all about helping people to be at peace, helping people to move to personal wholeness. So it's not too heady once you get into it.
Oh, well, now, au contraire, Mr. Brownstein. I mean, one of the topics of your book is you go deep, the order of manifestation and the other for the creation of the universe. I mean, I don't know how you get headier than that, dear sir.
All right, that might be heady. So there's the intellectual side of it. I will give you that because I like to think I'm intelligent, but at the same time, I'm intelligent enough to know if we don't make it practical for people to truly get the message, then it's kind of pointless. So yes, I was a philosophy major, so heady is probably accurate. Yet really, there is a message that's very down to earth.
Yeah, you don't find a lot of gearheads getting philosophy majors.
No, I don't think I'm the average gearhead.
What would make you? Because I know you went to Florida, Alabama, Roll Tide. But what makes one go philosophy? What would you go down that path, and what do you hope to do? Now, again, I know you didn't end up there, but at one point, and we'll talk about this, and I'd love to get the answer to this because your journey starts off in 1992 when you said you had a profound spiritual awakening.
That's what got me into philosophy.
What was that, and what led you to philosophy?
Yeah, sure. So that experience
can you share what it was, or is it too personal?
No, I can share it. In fact, there is a personal component, but I don't mind sharing that. I was 19 years old. I was lying in bed, having finished making love to my girlfriend of the time, and she was just rubbing my chest. There was nothing out of the ordinary, but I don't know. I felt open enough that in one instant that I didn't understand at the time, nor was I looking for it. I was not religious, but the entire room became permeated with light, love. Everything was just joy. It was blissful. It felt like the nature of reality. It wasn't just a brief moment of, oh, I got some high or something. It was tapping into something significant unintentionally. It went away the next morning. So that made me say, what was that? What happened? I was just young and naive enough to just say, something happened. What happened? I was in college, so I changed my major eventually to philosophy, thinking the philosophers must have the answer to this. But it was too heady, and they didn't have the answer. They were talking about this thing called God, but they couldn't tell you how to tap back into it. So eventually I became a religion major and then got into the practical aspects of the deeper teachings that deal with mysticism, which is really when we start doing meditation or the deep spiritual practices that help us to tap into that experience again. So that's what it became about for me, was just having that experience because it was so good. I wanted it for me, but I also wanted to share it with others. And that made me eventually say, what type of career could I have that could help to awaken people to the deeper truth of who they really are, which is what led me to what I do today, which is largely centered around hypnotherapy.
Did you ever recreate that experience? Have you ever?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It took 368 days, a little over a year. I know the dates because I was journaling about it. I did tap into it again with meditation and then more and more. Now, honestly, it's a daily experience. There's never a day that goes by that I'm not able to tap into that. I can just close my eyes and literally right now just feel that peace, that love, that joy, that bliss. It is everywhere. We just have to learn how to tap into it. Yeah. So even though that was the first awakening to it, what I learned is it's a universal experience that anyone can tap into and then can keep repeating, not even repeating it. It becomes your normal way of being as opposed to the old fear-based separate way of being. So it's possible for anybody. But yeah, it does take some work to get there.
Now, when you say hypnotherapy, the truth of it is, and I know this is not the first time you've heard this, most of us think of a Vegas act and let's cluck like a chicken, right?
Sure.
Which is, the power of suggestion is all that is, and
Sure.
people want to be a part of the act. And I get it. What is the true nature and what is the true, how do you achieve a hypnotherapeutic state?
Okay, sure. So, yeah, how do we achieve the hypnotic state? And what is hypnotherapy in general? It's much more than stage hypnosis. And of course, I've heard many times, or you can make me cluck like a chicken. It's like, well, no, only if you want to. What I found, after religion and philosophy, I got into Chinese medicine because I really wanted to help people tap into this experience. And it seemed like what you might call an energetic experience. But I found that that path wasn't quite right for me. When I found hypnotherapy, I found a profession that can have some low standards, but we've really worked with our institute to raise the standards significantly. But it's a federally acknowledged occupation. We're licensed by the Department of Education to offer career diplomas in the field. So there is a much more respectable version of hypnotherapy that maybe some people are aware of. What we find in this, so what we do is with the hypnotic state, we're able to access the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind, essentially, simply stated, is your emotional heart. So when somebody is hurt, sad, scared, angry, simply stated, stressed, anxious, depressed, right, that's a mental, emotional issue. My experience was philosophy and religion weren't really getting to the root of that the way I wanted to. Chinese medicine wasn't, and then Western medicine and Western psychology weren't getting to the issue the way that I wanted to approach it, which is if you're in a state of fear, let's get you back into love. If you're angry, let's get you back into peace, right? Finding the goal to be personal wholeness. So again, that one experience I had in 92, which again became a consistent experience for me over the years, was something I needed to get people to also tap into. I realized that's the one solution. If everybody finds inner peace, we will have a much different world. If everybody finds love inside of themselves, they're going to feel so fulfilled, they'll stop doing all these negative behaviors. Hypnotherapy is a way to directly access the subconscious mind, which is the seat of our emotions, the seat of our imagination. It's where all of our memories are stored. We can get in relatively instant access to that part of the mind and transform it very quickly in a way that you might call miraculous, meaning there's a miraculous shift that occurs from fear to love, from false, made up illusions of who we are to the real truth of who we are. And I just found this was a way, and a respectable way, once we understand the profession, to help people to make those changes quickly and with long-lasting results.
Do most people even realize the blockages and that in realizing who we are and the effect? Because I'll give you my own history as far as not to get too deep into it, but I didn't really start understanding the impact my childhood had until I was probably in my 40s. If you would have asked 26-year-old me, how much did your childhood have an effect on you? I'd be like, nothing. I'm great. Look, I'm fine. Look at me. And it wasn't until much years gone by that you can sit back and start to go, well, that ain't right. And that didn't happen. And especially when my own children came, then you can sit back and go, I'm conscientiously choosing not to raise you in the circumstances I was raised. How long is that a journey somebody younger can thing, or how long does it take? And when do most people come to that realization?
Yeah, it started for me at 19, but I understand for most people it doesn't. I find there's two ways people get into it. Either they have a awakening like I did, and then the path starts itself, or essentially you've suffered enough. And it's at what point have you suffered enough? For most people, that's usually when you're in your 40s and 50s. I would say our average demographic of student who comes through our training usually women, because they tend to be more open to their emotions. But men and women, usually 40s and 50s, they start waking up that maybe there's something more, or I've suffered enough. There must be a solution to this. And yeah, fortunately, a lot of people end up finding our school, whether they get private sessions themselves or just, of course, going through our training. You start realizing, you talked about blockages, that we do have blockages to the awareness of love's presence. Because my experience, and that happened at 19, is love is everywhere. We can call that God, but I don't know your audience. So, just there is something called love. Where is that? It can be with you all the time if you clear the blocks to that. And yeah, our childhood is a huge part of those blockages. So if we're not willing to look inside and acknowledge that we have a personal self that needs work, like we need some healing to occur. If we don't want to look at that, yeah, all we're really doing is delaying something that I believe inevitably needs to occur, which is eventually we're going to let go of what we're not, find out who we really are, let go of all the fear, and return to love. It's really a simple model, but yeah, how many people wake up to it and when? I don't know. I'm just out there spreading the message to get as many people to wake up as possible.
Well, and you're a bit of to me, it seems like you'd be a bit of a savant to come to that realization at 19. That is, you would be the exception, not the rule.
I believe I've experienced that. It is an exception, yet I always consider myself nothing special. And maybe that's why something like that happened. My first book was called The Mystical Writings of No One Special. I knew I had all this mystical wisdom, these experiences, and I knew that was out of the ordinary. But there was nothing special. I was like, so I guess I was just humble enough to allow reality to show itself to me. I think that's what it came down to. Being no one special, being nobody going nowhere, letting your mind be open enough to just let reality present itself for what it is. My experience is every present, like the present moment right now, is filled with immense peace. I've never been called a savant. All I can say is if I meditate on the present moment, if I'm just wise enough to get out of my head and stopping in the past, stopping in the future, there's profound peace right here. Like, that just seems smart to tap into. And the more I stay in the present moment, I realize there's love right here. There's joy right here. It doesn't require actions. It doesn't require getting new things. It doesn't require anything but being immensely present to the moment. And I don't know what made me well, I do know. At 19, I had that experience. And then I said, how do you tap back into that? And I did realize meditation was the primary way. Because when you meditate, you just basically learn to be present. And when you're present, you're a lot less afraid. You're a lot less stressed. But then the price of admission of really good meditation practice is so worth the effort, the price, the effort to meditate, because it leads universally, the experience for anyone who really practices, they find the same thing I did: peace, love, joy, bliss, oneness, and wisdom, right? Like the answers to our questions are there in that mental clarity. So yeah, I don't know who wouldn't want that.
Well, and my reason for calling you as a savant, because if I'm 19 years old and I feel a glow after having sex with my girlfriend, I'm thinking, man, that was really great sex. That, you're not open to the beauty of what you described. Right.
Hmm.
And that's my thing is I think your ability to get into the moment, even at that stage before you knew how to get into the moment, was already there. With a great athlete, they understand the concept of what they're doing. I've talked to professional golfers who've said, listen, I hit balls with my dad when I was 8 years old. And within 10 swings, I was hitting a pitching wedge 80 yards because it just made sense to me. And that's my point with you is that your savant tendencies was that you were already able to tap into what you just said. You were there in the present. You were right there in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I dedicated my life to studying the phenomena of what had happened to me. So I didn't know what it was. And for whatever reason, it happened when I was in college and I became a philosophy then religion major. In the religion Jainism, one of the lesser known religions of India, there was a term called Samyak Darshan. And it was the first term I heard that said, oh my God, that's what happened to me. It wasn't just like afterglow, after good sex. The Samyak Darshan means the soul's first glimpse of itself. And I was like, oh my God, that's what happened to me. So if we were to use theistic terms, it's like, if there's God and if I'm a soul, then somehow that revealed itself to me. Why? I don't know. I don't have the labels for, savant or whatever. But I did learn at some point, you find this in Buddhism as well, there are stages of awakening that occur for people. And now I can go into past lives of why somebody would come in and be more open than others. But again, I'm not looking for philosophical answers to it. I just want myself and others to have that direct experience. And yeah, there's ways to tap into it. I don't know personally why I tapped into it, but I do feel that I have a mission. Like, not everybody's walking around feeling like I'm on earth with a mission. I do feel like I'm here on a mission, and it's largely rooted in that one experience, just to get people back into a state of love. Again, I don't know why, but it seems like the best thing to do.
It's the Institute of Hypnotherapy, I believe, right?
Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. Mm-hmm.
Interpersonal hypnotherapy.
Well, the website is
everything you do has a lot of letters.
That's true. You're totally right. It's because all the good names are already taken.
It's just a lot of letters. I find it fascinating. My audience knows I'm a man of faith. I am. I don't try to hide it. My faith is very, very important to me, and I try to lead my life with it, and let it be one of the guiding center points of what I do and who I, as you say, I feel I'm here for. One of the things I do is even these conversations. The centerpiece of this entire podcast is that sharing our stories unlocks the essence of being alive for all of us. Because we all are hearing your story of that moment, and you being so aware of that moment. And I'm intrigued by, first of all, when you went into religion and you studied the religion, what journey have you found? Where are you right now?
As far as what, spiritual path?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what were you hoping to find when you went into it? And then when you studied all of that, and now with all these years of experience, I'm interested to see where you're at.
Yeah, sure. So I studied all the Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and all the Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Jainism, Sufism. Eventually, I found mysticism. And so Christian mysticism, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, they are all paths within every religion. I studied all of them, saying, what are the techniques these systems have to get into that experience again? So I would say I'm a Course in Miracles practitioner. Course in Miracles is a Christian theology. So like if you and I talk Christianity, I'll be right there with you in every step of the way.
Yeah.
However, because I'm universal in my approach, I could also talk to a Buddhist and we would connect perfectly as well. I would say now I'm a meditator, which means, like behind me there's one of the cushions. I just get on the meditation cushion and I sit. So let's go religious then. Psalms, be still and know that I am God. That's my religion. Just be still and know God. If you want to, again, I don't know your audience, but since you said you're a man of faith, the Holy Spirit, the voice for God, the divine wisdom within us is always there. And it doesn't need anything but me to sit still and get my mind quiet. And then I can commune with divine presence. To me, that's essentially my religion. Get still, listen to God, and then do what God tells me to do. It makes it really easy. So I think religion is just a path to tapping into divine consciousness. And I believe any good religion, honestly, will get you there. I know that's not necessarily a Christian teaching, but, peace and love and joy and bliss should be available for everybody. I don't think God is that cruel to keep it to only one type of person. So, yeah, I would say my spirituality, not really religion, but my spirituality is just to directly be in the presence of God in union and communion. And again, to let that run my life, to guide me.
Good answer. We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about meditation in detail on Here's What We Know. It's time to think differently when it comes to your parties, meetings, and groups. The catering from Havana Cuba restaurant in downtown San Jose. Instead of the same old, how about the most delicious Cuban sandwich you've ever had? You're tired of fries? Plantains, my friends, they'll change your world. And here's something you didn't know. Havana Cuba was voted one of the top 10 tamales in the entire South Bay. They have vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free options, and their website is 998cuba.com. They're located at 387 South 1st Street in downtown San Jose. It's Havana, Cuba. So we are talking to Matthew Brownstein, and we talked about your meditation, that you showed us your meditation couch and stuff. And we hear the words meditation. And I love the quote that you used from the Bible, be still and know that I'm God, because it is. And people will tell you that. People of faith, all faiths will tell you every now and then you just need quiet. You need quiet. And let the world come at you. Let the Holy Spirit, let God, let the universe is what it's trying to tell you if we don't take the time to listen. Can you explain to me meditation and how to get there and what is it you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, it depends on the path that you're taking. Like a Christian, for instance, would not try to make their mind blank. They would have their mind focused only on Christ. So it really depends on who the student is, how we would teach meditation. So some people think it's just, I have to stop my mind. I have to stop my thinking. That doesn't work. So the practice essentially is, first of all, to do it. So 5 minutes morning, 5 minutes evening. If you want to be a meditator, you have to meditate. And the discipline of 5 minutes morning, 5 minutes evening starts to get that neural pathway, that habit, that pattern carved in place. Once we decide, okay, I'm going to dedicate the first 5 minutes to God or whatever, just I'm going to get on the meditation cushion for 5 minutes and then do it 5 minutes at the end of the day. Once you start tapping into what I've been talking about, peace, joy, bliss, love, wisdom, mental clarity, you're going to want to sit more. So just force yourself 5 minutes minimum. And even if you had a rough day, just sit. The other thing is to sit with a straight spine. Don't sit in a recliner. Don't lie down in bed. Like sit up in a straight back chair, or if you learn how to sit on a meditation cushion, but not everybody's body can do that. So a straight back chair is great. Just sit still. That's the basics. Now, what do we do internally? Again, it depends on the style that you're getting into, but the most non-denominational, the most universal is just to follow the breath, right? So when you breathe in, just know that you're breathing in. When you breathe out, know you're breathing out. Don't try to stop your mind. Just keep coming back to your breathing. You notice you're thinking and worrying, acknowledge it, come back to your breathing. And then you can just simply count your breath so you can give your mind something to do. So literally the simplest teachings, which can lead you to the most profound realizations, the most profound experiences, sit still 5 minutes morning and evening, sit with a straight spine, watch your breath. You can count your breaths from 1 to 10 and then start again at 1. And if all you did was that, you'd be doing what some of the most advanced Zen monks are doing all around the world, just sitting. So in Zen practice, the most refined version of, let me not say this, one of the most refined versions of Buddhism is Zen Buddhism. And that's not theistic in any way. It doesn't go against Christianity because a Zen meditator just sits down and sits. And actually, that's just be still and know that I'm God. But the state is called shikantaza, which means just sitting. The highest state you could attain in Zen meditation is just sitting. Because when you're just sitting, you're totally present. When you're just sitting, you're intimate with your breathing. When you're just sitting, you're totally at peace. So that's it. Just be still and know that I'm God. If we just take the time to be still, it's more powerful than we realize. So there's fancy techniques, and I can teach them. But I'm telling you, even the most advanced people know if I just sit and do nothing, I can accomplish everything.
What is it? This turns into a physiological thing. What is the importance of the straight spine?
Yeah, well, it's not quite physiological. I would actually answer that more energetically. And again, I don't know your audience, but the best answer to that is in the yogic model of the chakra system. And we can even find possible references in the Bible to this theme. But anyway, what we find in Chinese medicine or in the yogic model is a series of energy channels or energy meridians. When we have our body bent over, when we're curled in a fetal position, that energy doesn't flow the same way. So what a meditator quickly learns from experience, without physiology or energy type teachings, it just feels so much better to sit in meditation with a straight spine. When in Zen, for instance, they say just to take the seat of meditation in that posture is enlightenment itself. That just to sit with a straight spine and breathe, if that's all you're doing, you are being all of who you are, meaning I'm just sitting here, sitting. So in Zen, we say, when walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. Above all, don't wobble. Right? So just sitting with a straight spine is, is like the essence of just pure sitting. And then when we walk, just walk, right? We don't want to walk with one leg dragging behind us and one arm holding a 50-pound weight, right? There's like a really graceful, proper way to walk. There's a really graceful, proper way to sit. So we see that with the images of the Buddha sitting in meditation, right? For Buddha to become Buddha, it's like one man, just like Jesus, like one man did something, again, maybe Jesus is more than a man, but, practically speaking, one person lived for 33 years. We only hear about his teachings for 3 of those years, and then we have very little actually of his teachings. But that one person created this huge movement. Buddha just sat under a tree, essentially, the last 6 months of his journey before his enlightenment. He just sat still under a tree with a straight spine. And he became enlightened to who he truly is. And he describes the same experience that anyone else who gets there does. So, yeah, what's the physiological nature? You want the spine to have a proper curve. And when we're sitting in a meditation cushion, it actually lets the spine be in its perfect ideal shape, which is going to cause the nervous system to function better. And then again, on the energetic level, to keep us free from blockages in that way.
If you've noticed, I've started sitting up straighter ever since you started talking.
Nice.
trying to get my moment.
Yeah, right. And hopefully breathing and being more in the present moment.
Yeah, breathing and stuff. Because when I hear the term Zen and even meditation, my thoughts turn to simplicity. That it's taking away all of the complications, whether in your body, your mind, or whatever. Because exactly what you were saying, you think breathing. When I hear meditation, I think breathing, because that's what I've read and heard. And you see somebody in a movie or a TV show, and all of a sudden it becomes for some reason holding your fingers up and breathing. But I just think simplicity is where you go with.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the reason I love Zen so much, and so when I was in college and I was trying to find out how to meditate, I did end up stumbling across a Zen meditation teacher, and he taught me how to sit. And he actually explained, in Zen, we don't meditate necessarily because meditation is happening all the time. So we do walking Zen, sitting Zen, eating Zen. It is very simple. But again, that's the formula in the Bible. Be still and know that I am God. But how do I be still? When I tried, I knew when I had that first spiritual awakening, I knew I needed to meditate to tap back into it. I had known that much, but I didn't know how to meditate. So I sat there with my spine rounded and my legs in a cross-legged Indian style position. I didn't know what to do with my mind or my breathing or my body posture. But my first Zen teacher, he just showed me how to position my hands. He said, your thumbs touch as if you're holding a piece of rice paper. And if they're too tight, you're too tense. If they loosen up, you've lost mindfulness. And it's like, wow, this is just how to position my hands. This is how to position my body. This is what to do with my breathing. It was incredibly simple, but I believe that's why it's so hard for people to tap into this. I lived in India and was studying there with a great teacher, like a master, and he would always have the same answer. He would just say, go back to the self meaning like the true self. He would just say, go back to the self. And no matter what your issue was, go back to the self, go back to the self. In Zen, all the pointing is directly to the mind, back to the sense of self. Like, why do the masters guide us to just focus on you, focus on you? You're right. It's as simple as possible because the ego, the ways of the world, we're so complex. But truth is very simple, and peace is very simple. Love is very simple. So the answer is simplicity versus complexity. Like Western medicine is all about the complexity. But when you get into the deeper, like the more energetic levels of healing, it's actually about getting more and more simple because it's a return to wholeness instead of dissecting and breaking things down and diagnosing. This is just a movement back into wholeness, which is actually a very simple principle. So I couldn't agree more that you picked out of that. It's all just really simple.
What was India like? I mean, I've got friends who are from India, but I mean, their take is from within. And I'm interested because I've had business associates who've gone to India for a week or whatever. But you said you actually lived there. What's it like?
I did. My first words are dirty and smelly, but it's actually mystical and magical. So when I first got up, first when the plane landed, I was in tears because I was like, oh my God, this is where great saints and sages, Buddha and these great beings have lived here. So I was just honored to be there. Then the first thing I noticed was the smells right away. They're just the most unique smells you've never in the West, had in your nostrils. Then there's a lot of poverty. A lot of just craziness. It's just amazing that the country functions at all. But I say that with the deepest respect, because when you get to know the people, friendly, loving, the children are, they're coming up begging to you in the street, but they're so innocent and beautiful. And they're like, ice cream, give me rupees. And so I found the main thing about India was religion or even spirituality is everywhere. You can't get into a cab without some religious reference. There's going to be a picture of a god or goddess. There'll be prayer beads. Like everywhere you go, there's temples all over the place. So yeah, despite the poverty and the filth in a lot of the places, the people are wonderful, and you're dealing with a culture that's embodied, embraced Christianity, like no problem at all. Like Jesus just became one of the Hindu avatars. So it's a very inclusive model that allows for any person, any religion to fit in. But really, yeah, there's an ancient wisdom in India that is very deeply spiritual. And so, yeah, I lived in the Himalayas at a meditation institute, and we just spent hours a day in meditation talking about these themes. It's a very easy place to be around like-minded people in that way. Not everybody, of course, in India, but certainly in the spiritual communities. Yeah, you find a wealth of spiritual knowledge and techniques that bring us back to states of peace, like we've been talking about.
I know you mentioned it a couple of times, and not to harp on it, but because it's in everything of the pictures we see. How did you reconcile the poverty? I mean, the U.S. we truly, unless there's small places in Appalachia, and I think also in the Southwest in Arizona and New Mexico, and maybe in Texas, but nothing approaches the scope and scale. How did you, as a Westerner, even though you were trying to find that moment, of being in the moment, how did you deal with it internally?
Yeah. Well, I was living in California before I moved up to upstate New York recently. So during COVID, I was in California. When you watch the homelessness there, what's been happening, it looks kind of like India, people just living in tents and, tarps. And how do you deal with that? For me, again, this is a Buddhist approach. It's what they call the Bodhisattva vow, which says no matter how enlightened I am, if there are still beings who are suffering, I'm going to still be of service. So there was a reporter who asked Mother Teresa, what do you do when you see all this poverty? And don't you just want to cry and cry and cry all day? She said, dear sir, if you think I have time to cry, you are out of your mind. So for me, I'm glad you asked the question, because it's really a heartfelt discussion of there's human suffering. So compassion, to me, has been the deepest sentiment that religion has ever come up with. And the Bodhisattva vow in Buddhism essentially says sentient beings are suffering, right? Any being who can feel, there's suffering there. And until that's done, I will not stop being of service. So to me, I don't have time to cry about it, but I hold tremendous compassion, and then engaging in some form of selfless service or sacred action to say, let my life be dedicated to relieving that suffering. And again, I realized the mind is the cause of human suffering. We are just causing so much pain and distress unnecessarily because we have these untrained minds that don't know how to tap into peace. So for me, instead of just focusing on the problem, I decided to focus on the solution, which really, again, is the mind. So as long as I know I'm doing something to relieve suffering, then it's nowhere near as devastating. But excuse me, also to give. So instead of just handing all the, as a Caucasian male, you walk out of a car in someplace in India, you will be swamped by beggars. And instead of just handing them money, you just donate to organizations, to charities who give the money out better. Because if not, you're kind of empowering people. And there's a culture there of begging. But if you give to organizations, it does help to relieve more of the suffering at a higher level.
I live in California, and that's pretty much the attitude we have to take with the homelessness out here.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, not to judge anybody, but if you give somebody $1 or $5, you just wonder you're wondering if they're going to do anything with that money that helps their lives, and so we try to donate to organizations in our church and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I will ask you something more frivolous simply because it's fun. What was the favorite thing you ate in India? What was your Indian jam?
The food wasn't that good in India, honestly, but I do love chai tea. So it's not a food, but it's a drink. The Indian food in America is better because there's just higher standards of quality of produce and cooking styles there. Yeah, it's really low income. So there, as I lived in, we didn't actually have really good food at all. I can't think of it. Like the pizza there was made like with ketchup, and the burritos were, it was a nightmare in the food category, but you can't really get a good cup of chai in the United States. There's one place I found in Santa Fe, New Mexico that has sublime chai, and some Indian restaurants have really good chai tea. But, India, that's the place to get the best. When you sit on a beautiful river in the mountains, in the Himalayas in India, sipping a cup of chai, there's nothing better as far as that experience goes.
So if you see somebody saying authentic Indian style cooking, maybe not.
I don't like
authentic Western style Indian.
Yeah, I don't like spicy. And when I got there, the first house we went to, I met some people. My mouth was on fire, and there was nothing pleasant about that at all. I'm not into spicy food, so no, I didn't. But eventually, the local. I lived at a spiritual community, like at an ashram, as it's called, and the local restaurants catered to the Westerners who were there. So they gave us food that was more suitable for our palate, but terribly spicy.
When you talk about, and some of the things I've read is talking about healing and self-healing and how to get past that. And I was wondering, because disease, and that's one thing that we deal with. And also, maybe somebody listening right now who's either facing it or has a relative facing it. Zen and hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is what I know you do. When it comes to addiction, how do you face that? What can that help with? What you're trying to offer?
Yeah, well, I like that you mentioned the word healing leading into this. My big tagline for all the years of teaching and lecturing and whatnot has been healing the mind, healing the body. Because again, it comes back to the mind. So when we go to addiction, we do have to acknowledge behaviors don't happen by themselves, right? My hand doesn't move itself to grab a cigarette, right? My feet don't walk themselves to the local heroin dealer, right? Like whatever it is. The behavior comes about largely because of our emotions, right? So that's the first thing to acknowledge. Like, why am I turning to some substance? Because I don't feel good. Essentially, that's what it's about. You don't feel okay. You just want to be okay. And then beyond okay, like I'm saying, you want to be happy, peaceful, joyful, loving. So we're turning to substances to try to get that feeling. Really? You're just looking for love in all the wrong places. But once you realize it's the mind that's making decisions to try to make the heart feel better, then you catch on to addiction. So your heart feels bad, like your spouse divorced you. Your heart is devastated. Your mind tries to think about what to do to make your heart feel better. So the heart is the root of the mind. Whatever the heart feels, the mind talks about, trying to figure out what to do to feel better. In hypnotherapy, we can go right into that heart, right into the subconscious, right into your emotional mind. We can say, what's your story? What are you all about? And then you get the story. Well, he left me, or, oh, when I was a kid, my dad did this. Okay, and then it's this simply stated, but what do you need to feel better? Once we get that part of us to feel better, and we bring that part back into a state of peace, then we can say to the entire psyche, Do you need that substance anymore? Because why were you even doing that substance? I was trying, people might not realize it, but if you kept saying, why are you turning to cocaine? Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep doing this? Eventually they're going to answer, because I'm looking for the euphoric, peaceful, blissful, loving, joyful feeling. Well, find it through meditation. Find it within. So hypnotherapy can help us to heal the parts of us that are not whole and complete. We can program the mind, essentially, to stop the negative behaviors, and then we can redirect that energy to something much healthier behaviors. But yeah, ideally, techniques that make the hypnotherapist obsolete in the life of the client. So if I empower my clients to meditate, to use self-hypnosis, to do recordings I've made for them that guide them into the state, then that becomes much more addictive. Like, I am addicted to meditation because it's so blissful. It's not discipline anymore to get on the cushion. I'll spend hours in meditation every day because it's so incredibly fulfilling. So yeah, helping people to clear the blocks and then to empower them to know how to tap into something much better.
And when it comes to facing a serious illness, I literally just talked to a lady who was a cancer survivor, and she said her doctor told her, listen, I can tell you who's going to respond to treatment best. Not that you're going to be cured, but I can tell you who's going to respond to treatment best by the attitude you bring in.
Sure.
You know? And so I wonder, again, going back to what you're offering, you know, as far as somebody facing those kind of situations, those, you know, I mean, traumatic life experiences that's going on right now that deals with mortality. What does hypnotherapy, what does that offer? Meditation, what does that offer those people?
Yeah, I was just on a podcast yesterday speaking about hypnotherapy for cancer, and I was talking about one of my clients now who has leukemia. And I can just quick answer. There's so much to talk about here, but his white blood cell count was way too high. His platelets were way too low. We've worked for a couple months together, with the support of his physicians, of course, and the referral from his physician. We have seen those blood levels completely normalize. I've seen this before with cancer as well. I've seen tumors shrink. I've seen them, and again, I only have so much time to explain all this, but miracles absolutely do occur. Yet what you're talking about is the essence of it. We need to be in a state of miracle mindedness, miracle readiness. So the attitude, you're right, is everything. One of my colleagues, so we have a staff member who has Parkinson's, and one of my colleagues, her mother has Parkinson's. The staff member knows all about this work, and she's been using Parkinson's in coordination with her physician, who's thrilled about the work, and her quality of life is so much better. My other colleague's mother, who has Parkinson's, is not open to any of this stuff, and we can't use the techniques on her to help her to feel better. So the first step is just willingness, readiness, open-mindedness enough. And you do have to be willing when you're really working to heal the mind, to heal the body. You do have to look at your stuff, like you said. Like, you have to be mature enough to look at your childhood, to look at your hurts, your grievances. People don't realize how much hurt, sadness, fear, anger, guilt, grief, and shame, how much those emotions wreak havoc on our physiology. So we do have to be willing to look at that for hypnotherapy to be very effective. But if you have somebody who's in that state of readiness, where they've suffered enough, where there's enough willingness, then we can take over with our techniques. And yeah, I could quote story after story of medical miracles, verified, documented through the power of the mind. And again, in conjunction with traditional care, because we're not saying we're an alternative, but you do this as a complementary way, professionally, responsibly, with other medical professionals. Huge change can occur in people's lives.
To help in the attitude, as we said. It's just been fascinating. Do you still view yourself as a monk?
I wish I was. I am a monk at heart, and I've lived for 5 years in different spiritual communities. But every time I would try to just stay there and make that, like, I wanted to just stay in India and live there. I have a mission, as I mentioned, and Spirit was constantly telling me, nope, you got to write these books. Nope, you got to open the school. Nope, you got, like you said, you wouldn't even want to read all my credentials because I am so busy doing so many things to help humanity. And the old model of a monk, or even like the romantic notion of a yogi who's meditating in a Himalayan cave, like, great, okay, you're blissing out. you're happy, but how are you helping anybody else? So in the Bodhisattva vow, it's not about my personal enlightenment anymore. There's not much more to achieve. Like when you find peace, bliss, love, and joy inside of you, all you want to do is give it away. So to me, a monk might be somebody in training to actually get out there and heal the world. Because if you're a monk only going for your own liberation, great, keep doing that. But once you feel liberated, once you feel saved, once you feel free, whatever that means, then you just have to get out there and give back. My experience has been, we all go together or we don't go at all. It's like your suffering is my suffering. Your lack is my lack. It's like, I really have experienced that we're all one. And if my left hand has money, well, then my right hand has money. But if my left hand doesn't have money, my right hand doesn't have money, right? It's like if you're lacking, I am lacking. Like the hurricane came through Florida, where our corporate headquarters is, and a lot of our students were affected. Well, now my income is affected, right? We are all interconnected. So the best thing I can do for me, capital M me, meaning like, we're all one, is to get out there and help you, help anybody to heal. So I couldn't be a monk because it's selfish. I mean, for me, I can't speak of others, but for me, it would have been selfish to just stay in meditation, blissing out on God, rather than getting out there and being of service. And Spirit won't let me. I'll be on the meditation cushion and God is like, all right, go write that book. I'm like, no, I just want to meditate. Nope, go write the book. Eventually you just have to listen. And yeah, it leads to a life of action and service.
Institute of Hypnotherapy.com. I know you are very, very busy and I appreciate you for your time. Matthew Brownstein, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate you.